Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Everyone in the world is looking for peace. Everyone in the world is trying to find joy in their lives, trying to find transcendence in their lives. The question is how, and what can bring about it? What takes you from your state, whatever your state is, to a state of transcendent joy, a state of contentment with the world? And what are the obstacles that hold one back from this state? Well, there are a lot of answers to this question, and there are a lot of methodologies that are used in the world in order to try and resolve this for people. One thing that I've noticed is that if you come in contact with a saint, a holy person, just being in that presence will alter you. However, it isn't going to sustain you forever. There has to be effort on your own behalf in order to sustain the jolt that you get from being in that presence. And what are the methods for sustaining the jolt that you can get just from being in the presence of a holy person? And there's also a danger if you are close to a holy person. Some people believe that because they somehow met the holy person, that has been sufficient to save them, and they don't need to do anything personally. It's gratis. You ran into him, you touched him, you're there, and then they go on and live their lives. The Christians have this discussion often. Are you saved by taking Jesus into your life, or do you have to continue to do good works? And even though you've said you've accepted Jesus, without good works, is that just a babbling, a saying of things that doesn't mean anything? Well, Bawa, our teacher, came as a mercy into this world to bring antidotes for all of the misery that the world has handed out to people. He brought a methodology for repairing the difficulties in our lives, and he taught that methodology. He said that if you are arrogant, you already have humility inside of you. The cure is within you. If you are depressed, joy is already in you. The antidote is in you. If you gossip, the antidote, quietness, is already in you. All of the antidotes to your conditions are already in you. You just need to find them and apply them to your situation. So whenever people get into the state where they say, this is impossible, this is hopeless, I can't get anywhere, they're not looking, and they're not trying to change their mindset. The mindset is what keeps you in a place. Also, there is this strange love of degraded things that people have in this world. People enjoy their anger. People enjoy their hate. People enjoy the ability to segregate and separate themselves above others. And when that enjoyment exists within people, it's very difficult for them to break through and go into the appropriate qualities. So if you are in a state that is less than gracious, if you are in a state that is less than demure, less than content, less than transcendent, you have to look for things to take you out of that state. But if your anger is such that you need that anger to maintain your self-identity, you can't go there. If your hate is such that you need that hate to maintain your self-identity, you can't go there. And unfortunately, a lot of the world identifies itself through separations, identifies itself through the things that they hate. I am who I am because I hate this. I am who I am because I am angry at this. I am who I am because I'm different than this. People don't see the sameness in each other. And part of the reason is that they are taught hate, they are taught anger from the time they're little. So if you end up within a group that teaches differences and that teaches high and low, you will believe in that. What you learn as a child is written on stone. What you learn later is written on water. India created an entire governing system based on differences, based on caste, based on what they called the untouchables, all the way to the Brahmins, the holy ones. So there were these people who weren't even allowed to walk on the sidewalk because of their inherent lowliness and their inherent disfavor in humanity. We need to pull away from that kind of thinking. Now, that doesn't mean that we're all the same, but it does mean that we all have the capacity to become that which is the highest level of transcendent humanity. But it doesn't mean that we're there. When Moses came down from the mountain with the tablets, there was a man whose name I believe was Koresh, who said to him, "Moses, why are you the one in front? We're all the same. I can do what you do. I can lead like you lead. I can talk like you do. Who needs you, Moses?" And lightning struck, and the ground opened, and he fell in. And then the ground closed on him. We're not all the same. And we need to be able to see the ones who are holy and how they are transcendent. And we have to be able to honestly look at ourselves and see if we have reached that level of transcendence or if we have a long way to go. So we need to be able to recognize holiness, because if we can't recognize holiness, we are not going to move forward. If we are the same as everybody else, there's nowhere for us to go. We've already gotten there. And the only thing that gives us that idea is our own arrogance, our own belief system that elevates us in a way that is contrary to truth. And most people, when they look at themselves, see themselves in an entirely different light than other people see them, especially if they're arrogant. I remember once there was this man who was constantly trying to make, an older man, trying to make his way with young women. And my daughter said to me, "I'd love to see the mirror he looks in." And it's like that. People have ideas about themselves and the way they see themselves that has nothing to do with what's actually going on. And that's why, in order for us to make progress, we have to be able to honestly look at ourselves. We have to make honest evaluations of who we are, where we are, how we got there, and where we want to go to. And we have to do it with humility while being small. One of the things Bawa taught was remedial humility. He taught people how to come from wherever they came from and bring humility into their lives. It's an important course. They should have it in all colleges. It should be 101, maybe through 908, because it's a constant thing. And it's a constant danger. The more accomplished you become, the more humility you need. The more transcendent you become, the more humility you need. Because you can't hold on to transcendence without humility. You can't get to these higher places unless you've let go of all the things that gave you pride and arrogance and esteem. These are not the material of transcendence. What's the material of transcendence is the qualities that are godly. And the godly qualities come from a transcendent place where the power and the glory is beyond estimate. Bawa used to say, Allah is a beggar to a beggar and a king to a king, which means if you have the arrogance of a king, Allah will come and depress that arrogance. He'll put you in your place. But if you have the humility of a beggar, he'll come under you, bring you up, and hold you up. So your relationship with the qualities exemplifies and brings forth the truth of your relationship with Allah. If your relationship with the qualities is tenuous, your relationship with Allah is tenuous. If mercy and compassion are outside of the realm of your experience and outside of the realm of what you can do with others, then your relationship with Allah is outside of the realm of your experience. All of our ideas, all of the way we see things, all of our interactions have to constantly have a consciousness that brings into those actions the qualities of reality. And the qualities of reality are separate from the qualities that we know in the world. The qualities of reality are constantly on behalf of others. The qualities of reality are constantly giving to others. The qualities of reality are constantly uplifting others. So our lives have to become like that. If you watch holy men, and we've been fortunate enough to live with one, what we saw was that he gave his life on behalf of others. There was not a section in him that needed things. He gave things. He didn't need things. And if you gave him something, he gave it to somebody else. So, can we get to the point where we are not needy? And needy doesn't just mean material needs. Needy means attention. Needy means having people wait on us, take care of us, etc. Wealth takes us to a place where we can have lots of servants and lots of material things. But does that same wealth take us to a place where we are content within ourselves? And a lot of the world runs around making believe that they are content and proving to others they are content. In the late 1800s, somebody wrote a book called The Theory of Conspicuous Consumption. And it was basically about showing others how well off you are. And that you buy things not out of utilitarian purpose, but out of this need to show people how well off you are. So people began to assume that if you had things, you were happy. That if you had wealth, you were happy. If you had material things, you were happy. The world of material things will not bring you contentment. It can't, because it's not real. It's from this illusory dunya. It's from the ocean of illusion. The only reality comes from the truth that is Allah and the qualities that are Allah. And if we don't have these qualities, then what we have are the taints and the blemishes that we acquire through our actions within this world. And somehow we have to begin a program in our own lives to release ourselves from these taints, to release ourselves from these acquired blemishes. Because if we don't, we will stay in the world of taints and blemishes. We will stay in the world of not God's qualities. We will stay in the world of resentment and jealousy, ignorance. And we will think that these things are somehow elevated. Bawa called this anyanam, which means the ignorance that thinks ignorance is some kind of wisdom. And it's spread all through the world. There are religions that preach that separation is what makes you strong. They preach that that differences are what allows you to move forward. And that if you get yourself involved with people beneath you and below you, you are tainting yourself, as if taint comes from kindness, as if taint comes from mercy, when in fact it's just the opposite. Taint comes from pushing people away. Taint comes from not understanding the truth between ourselves and all other men. The road is one that doesn't end. People can even become kind to the point where they begin to overrate their own kindness, begin to be too much in a way to try and show that they are assisting. And Satan uses this tool. And there's a story of a sheikh who used to sit in the market, and he was the kindest of men. Everything he had was given to others. And Satan wanted to get close to him. So Satan came in the form of a snake, and he said to him, there are men trying to kill me. You have to hide me. And the sheikh said, of course. And he took him and put him under his turban. And he said, they'll find you. They'll find me if you put me under your turban. We have to do something else. And the sheikh kept coming up with ideas of where to put him. And he said, I think, the snake said to him, I think the only solution is if you swallow me. And he swallowed him. And then Satan worked on him from the inside. And that's because this man, in his kindness, became so arrogant, he thought he could save this snake. When in truth, none of us can save anyone else to that extent. Only Allah can do that kind of work. And when you begin to think that you can do Allah's work, you begin to fall, and you begin to fall internally, even though you may have what appear to be positive intentions. So we have to be very careful, and we have to have an open view all the time. Don't swallow snakes. It's simple advice. Don't swallow snakes, and don't get too close to snakes. The world's full of snakes, and they're often disguised. And we have to do the best that we can to be able to tell the difference between a snake and a human. And often humans are actually snakes. And Bawa says to us, friends will make the difference in your life. They will take you to the highest places, or they will bring you to the lowest places. And we have to be cognizant of that. So we have to keep the company of good people for the sake of goodness, not for the sake of status. And we have to understand that. Bawa called himself the Ant-Man. And he said he was the lowest of all creatures in this world. Now, can we imagine taking on that status? Can we imagine calling ourselves the lowest of all creatures in this world and moving through life in that way, with humility and with a kindness that gives at all times? Yesterday, I went to see a movie, and it was a movie about Mr. Rogers. And I highly recommend that everybody go see this movie. And it was done in an interesting way. Somebody had a problem, and it showed you how Mr. Rogers helped resolve the problem for him. But in doing that, it showed you Mr. Rogers' technique and the way Mr. Rogers was as a human. And one of the things that he said when he was talking to somebody, he said, at this moment, the most important thing to me in the world is my conversation with you. Nothing else gets in the way of that. And then there was one other moment that whoever was directing or wrote this thing had an insight into what a saintly man can do. He was sitting in a restaurant with somebody who was trying to help. The restaurant was full of people. And Mr. Rogers says to him, for a moment, think of all of the people who've loved you and brought you to the place you are in the world. And Mr. Rogers became very quiet. And the man became very quiet. And then you noticed all of a sudden, everybody in the restaurant became very quiet. And a stillness enveloped the entire place. This is what happens when truth enters into a room. This is what happens when the important things are brought to the forefront and people recognize them. There is an immediate inward response. Now, Bawa often tells the story of the two princesses who were constantly in battle over who was the most beautiful. And they finally came to a little town, and they said to each other, as they were arguing, they were twins, they said, let's stop here, and we'll have this town decide which of us is the most beautiful. So they get out of the carriage, and they tell the first person they see in the square, and they all knew who they were because they were the princesses, and they all knew their reputation. One was vile and one was merciful, so they were afraid. And they bring the head man of the village and tell him what's going on, and could he decide this. He says, I think I have a solution. And he talked to them. And they said to him, we've decided that you are going to decide which of us is the most beautiful. He said, okay, walk away from me. And they did. And he said, walk towards me. And they did. Walk away from me. And they did. And he went on like this for about 5 minutes, back and forth, back and forth. He said, I've decided. One of you is most beautiful when you leave, and one of you is most beautiful when you enter. Now, what's the point of these stories? The point of these stories is our lives. Who are we? Are we most beautiful when we leave, or are we most beautiful when we enter? And if we're most beautiful when we leave, are we going to do something about it? Are we going to bring ourselves to a place where people want to see us, where people welcome us? We need to be the ones who are most beautiful when we enter. We need to be the ones that bring a stillness to a situation so that when we come into the room, everything becomes serene because of the serenity that we carry. Bawa would say you can tell the Sufis because of the serenity that they carry, because of all of the prayers that they've done. It vibrates and resonates from them. What vibrates and resonates from us? What is it that we want to vibrate and resonate from us? We have to give thought to all of these things, and we have to begin to do something about it. The Prophet said that Allah loves effort, and effort is something that has to be applied to our lives on a constant basis. We can't sit and become secure in our situation. We can't sit and become secure in our position. We can't believe that we have reached any sort of level. Our humility has to tell us that we have miles and miles to go before we sleep. And if we can keep that attitude, and if we can keep in touch with the true qualities that are Allah's, then we can become transcendent. We can get to the point where we can help other people, where we can touch other people. But we have to set that intention, and then we have to put forth effort to maintain that kind of integrity in our own being. The cure for every one of our problems is within us. Every difficulty that we have has a cure within us. We have to find that cure and use it. May Allah make it easy for each of us to do that. Ameen. Ameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.